Hey everybody, and welcome back. I am sitting in my ochre corner to talk about stuff that's been going on with me. This past month has been slow in terms of my my actual work projects coming in. I have mentioned this before, but this time of year does tend to be fairly light. Although this time last year was when I officially moved to painting full time. So when I made that announcement in around the beginning of January, I guess, I got a lot of response from that. And so I think I probably got more work than I might normally have simply because I was more available at that time. And now a lot of those people have been giving me a lot of work over the past year, and so perhaps they just don't have as much as they did before. But it's not like I haven't been working at all. Here's a few of the things that I have worked on over the past month. So one interesting project that has sort of turned into several projects was I did a repaint of Poe Dameron's X-Wing from Force Awakens, Star Wars Force Awakens, and that turned into another one, and then a third, and probably in total about half a dozen inquiries about doing that particular project. Didn't realize that that thing was going to be so popular, but I guess right now in the gaming meta, Poe is kind of the hot thing right now. So if you're playing that game, there's a good chance, and well, if you're playing the Rebels specifically, there's a good chance that you're using Poe. So I guess it makes sense. I've also noticed that other people who have their own painting businesses are doing a lot of Poe repaints as well. So it's kind of interesting how things like that happen. But I've always found that when I do something well, it turns into more people who want me to do that same thing. And in this case, that's pretty fun. I'm kind of happy with it. I got to paint some Reaper minis. This was just a small project. I don't get enough Reaper mini projects. Let me just throw that out there right now, that I actually really enjoy doing those and similar miniatures. They have a good amount of detail, but not too much. They are interesting and varied. Sculpting and casting is usually pretty good. And generally speaking, I have to do one of, a particular design. So that means that I don't get bored at all. I mean, not that I ever really get seriously bored, but when you paint 10 of something that is virtually identical, it can kind of get old. So that's all I'm saying. And in particular, the Reaper Fantasy Minis are a lot of fun and really interesting, and it sort of always brings me back to my early days of miniature painting, because that's the kind of stuff that I was doing. But in this case, I had a little gnome, crossbowman that actually had this little separate shield that he was supposed to use like as cover, and I've seen it done both as a separate piece and being put on the base with the mini. And I decided that I liked it as a separate piece because that way it could be used either or. You weren't stuck with this giant shield on the mini's base all the time. And what was the other piece? Oh, the elf with the white dragon armor. And that was a lot of fun. I don't do a lot of white. And in this case, it's not really that much white either. It's sort of a very light bone color, a lot of seraphim sepia for shading. And then I think it really started as a khaki to ivory with a lot of white mixed into it for highlights. But it's not something I've ever really done, and it's predominantly this sort of off-white color, and I was really happy with it, so that was fun. I got to do a skull keep for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Haven't done that. Actually, that's I think my very first painting mini is the big Wizard's Tower for Warhammer. And so as I was working on this, like, oh wow, this is like deja vu, because I haven't done another one of those since then, and that was 2010, I think. So it's been a while. I did a couple of Chariots of Tzeentch. One of them is the Burning Chariot, and the other one's the Not Burning Chariot. Got to do a lot of airbrush work with that to get some nice blending tones, you know, those kind of cool orangey yellow to red, or yellow to orange to red. It probably makes more sense. And was very happy with that. That was a fun project. And then I just recently finished some dust minis. And this is a sort of a regular client that I've been doing stuff for. So it's kind of fun when I get those, because for the most part, I know what he wants because I've done so many different sets for him that it's like, okay, well, it's these paints and it's going to be in this pattern and go. And so it's gotten to the point where I don't even have to think about it, even though it is probably one of the more complex paint jobs that I do, because it's almost a fall camo pattern on his units, although this one had some black too. Also included with that were 2 minis from Bombshell. Bombshell Minis being a company that seems to subsist primarily on Kickstarters. One of them is a sort of Rosie the Riveter kind of character with a giant wrench, like a pipe wrench, and the other one is an archaeologist. And they were a lot of fun. And actually I did something with them that I haven't really done in a while. And I'm not even entirely sure why I did it. Well, my brain has been wandering in this direction for a while, ever since I started using the watercolor paints. And let me get right to it. I went from using black primer to white primer, which in general, it's not a huge deal. I'll use white primers if I'm going to be painting something that's predominantly yellow, orange, or red, because it's the only way to get those colors to be really brilliant. But in this case, I'd been thinking about the fact that watercolors have been particularly good for washing, layering, and blending. And I used to do a style of painting where you start with white and then you're essentially glazing everything. You know, you're just washing in your colors and building them up. And I was never particularly good at it, but it seemed like a good way to go. And the only problem would occur when you screwed something up and it was really hard to get back to that original washed in color, because you never really painted that color on. The color was coming from essentially just the layers of paint that you had on, if that makes any sense. So sort of like in the recesses, you would have what would be close to the original color, but as you got more into the highlight areas, it was just essentially a thin glaze of that paint. So if you somehow got paint onto that thin glaze, I found it difficult to reproduce that color in order to touch that up. Now I can do that. Now I'm much more confident, because we're talking about like in the 90s, I think, mid-90s is when I used to do that. And I thought, you know what, it'd be interesting to go back and try that method again. And so I did it on these 2 Bombshell minis in particular, and I was really happy with the results. And I think I may experiment more with that painting style, kind of going back to, well, not exactly my roots, but sort of like the first real stylistic choice that I made when I was painting in the earlier days. So aside from that, I also have done some, and I forgot to photograph them. Maybe I'll do it before I put this video up, but I finished up painting some more of my Imperial Assault minis, which I continue to love, except for the Stormtroopers. And actually that was most of what I painted recently. The Stormtroopers are different from the other minis in that their casting is horrible. Like, if the rest of the minis were cast like the Stormtroopers, I would have given up on these minis a long time ago. But the rest of them are so good, and it just bums me out. And the only thing I can think is that because the Stormtroopers have to be reproduced so many times in comparison to the rest of the minis, is that the molds are getting overworked, and that's why they're so bad. Which is just a shame, because you know that the masters were fantastic. So to see them abused in this way with horrible castings just kills me, because all the rest of the minis are great. But I also I actually went back. I had finished my Darth Vader, and then I went back and worked on him again. I actually spent, I don't know, like another half hour, 45 minutes, just trying to highlight the helmet. I didn't want to just paint gloss on it. I feel like that's cheating. I could have done that, I suppose, but it doesn't always look right. I'm fine with using gloss where it seems to work, but on something like that, the scale always seems off to me. So I spent a lot of time trying to get that to look better. And then I started on the commando guy, whose name I forget, one of the heroes. And I can't recall. I'll throw pictures up, but still loving painting those minis, and I want them to be. I want to play the game more. We haven't done that much recently, but I'll get to that. So, in terms of projects that I have coming up, I've mentioned this. I think I mentioned this last month, but I'm doing an assault carrier project, and the carrier is in, and so I'm about ready to get started. It's going to probably be a little bit more of an extended project, and I plan on doing several videos related to it. To start with, I'm actually going to do a video on disassembling it. It can be terrifying to tear one of those things apart. And if you want to get inside for any reason, in this case, I need it because I'm doing lighting at least. I'm considering sound effects, but I don't know if there's enough space inside to do that. But even just for lighting, I need to be able to get into the main hull so I can wire everything up and have a place to put batteries and everything else, and decide how I'm going to deal with power. But that's one of the things. So it's going to get a repaint. It's going to get lighting. It's going to get possibly sound. And then my first 3D printing project, which is going to be, I want to create some cargo containers, or maybe just one big cargo container, to replace the TIE fighters, because the ship is a repurposed freighter, and I want to sort of bring that back. And even though I don't have a 3D printer yet, but I discovered that UMass Amherst, their library, or specifically their media center, I don't forget what that's called, multimedia something. Anyway, it's in their library. They have a 3D printer that is open to the public, and although the process by which you get access to it is a little convoluted, in fact, you go online to their site, you upload the file that you want to print, then you make an appointment to go talk to somebody about it, and then you talk to them. And I guess the idea is that if there's any they walk you through the process itself, and if they foresee any problems, they'll let you know. And I mean, that was really it for me. They didn't. My first project through them, just to test out the process, was something that I knew that was just going to work. So there was no real advice on that particular project. But then when that's all done, they print it, let you know that it's done, and then you come and pay for it, and it's like 15 cents a gram or something like that, which I wasn't exactly sure what that was going to mean in terms of actual cost. But the thing that I'm doing is probably, yay big, and it is a holder for your damage deck and counters for X-Wing. And is supposed to cost about $7. It's actually already ready, and every time I want to go out and get it, we've been getting snow. We haven't gotten snow all winter, but now that I actually want to go somewhere and do something, we're getting snow. So anyway, that's a really, for me, is a really exciting project that I'm really looking forward to, because it is bringing in a number of things that I've really been wanting to explore further, specifically lighting. Sound is just sort of a maybe, like an extra. And then, but the 3D printing in particular, I was very excited about that. So I've been playing around. I want to do at least one video coming up about that process, how I'm approaching it, what I'm planning to do. And so you can look forward to that one very, very soon. So some other things I've got coming up are some Forge World models, specifically some dreadnoughts, along with a whole bunch of conversion bits for the arms. Well, conversions? No, just really options, I should say. I'm actually going to get started with that as soon as I'm done with this video. I've got a couple of Hordes models coming in, one big, one not so big. And the 5,000 subscriber contest winner finally chose his piece. We're going to be doing the Celestant Prime, which actually goes over budget in terms of the contest, but we sorted it all out, and he's going to pay the difference in cost for the model, and I'm actually really excited about doing it. I haven't painted a single Age of Sigmar piece yet, and this is really kind of an exciting looking piece, so I'm really looking forward to doing it. So that is I think it for now. I am really looking for new projects, though. I just need you to know that if you need something done, now is the time to schedule me. The projects that I've been getting have been like, hey, can you do this? Sure, send it over, do it, done, send it back. I mean, it's been like that. It's starting to build up a little bit. I've gotten a lot of inquiries recently, but not as many bites as I'm used to. So makes me a little worried, because I gotta still pay the bills. So anything you can do to help with that would be great. So I have done a little gaming over the past month. Not a lot, but a little. Well, not a lot of tabletop gaming, let's just say that. I played a game of Squadron Strike, which is a 3D space combat game. I think I have the title right. From Ad Astra Games. It's one of those games that when you look at it, like if you were to just pick up the rule book and flip through it, you'd go, nope. Or at least I would. Like, just throw it back down. That ain't for me. As it turns out, you can scale the difficulty, and I think there's like essentially 3 or 4 levels of difficulty you can use. And I think we used the first level, and immediately realized that we should be playing the second, because I was making assumptions about how things worked that didn't exist in the way that we were playing the game, but did exist in other forms of the game, if that makes any sense. So that was interesting. We also played Void Striker, which is kind of interesting because I play tested the first edition of that game in the 90s, and this was actually like the second edition of the game. And so while my name is in the credits of the first edition, it is not in the credits of the second edition, which totally makes sense because they're very different games. You can see that they're related. They're like cousins, but they're not so close that you would say that I had anything to do with the current version. But aside from that, I haven't really done any tabletop gaming, but I have purchased a number of games. I picked up the Advanced Song of Blades and Heroes, because I'm really excited to try that out. And for those of you who don't remember me talking about this game before and don't know what I'm talking about, it's from a company called Ganesha Games, and it is a very small fantasy skirmish game. And it has a very light set of rules that, again, at first blush, I felt like was just going to be devoid of flavor, but as it turns out, that's not true at all. And it's a lot of fun. It's very interesting. It almost has a pushing your luck aspect to it, because the sort of one of the core mechanics is that when it's time to activate one of your units, you can roll versus its quality level 1, 2, or 3 dice. Up to you. You choose how many you want to do. And for each success you get, you can do an action with that figure. But if you roll 2 failures or more, in the original game, that was just a turnover. Like, you were done with your turn, you hand the dice to your opponent, and then they go. Which always meant that if you just rolled 1 die for every one of your figures, you could activate every one of your figures. But if you ever rolled more than that, there was a possibility of screwing up and losing the rest of your turn. So that's always been an interesting aspect of it. Now, actually, with the advanced game, they changed that up a little bit so that with any failure, your opponent has the opportunity to activate one of his units in response. And with multiple failures, then he has the option to take the initiative or to activate a unit with multiple dice, his choice. So anyway, it's been one of my favorite skirmish games, and I like it a lot. And so I'm excited to sort of dig more into the new advanced version. One thing they did that struck me as a little odd was they added their own fantasy world to it, because one of the things I really liked about it was that it was kind of background agnostic and you could just do whatever you want with it. And that really hasn't changed, except that they added on the fantasy world. So it doesn't really bug me that much, but it did bug me a little bit. One other thing to know about the game system is that it is utilized for a number of different games, not just the fantasy game. There's historical versions, there is Arthurian, there is weird fantasy fungus creatures, there is a sort of a modern combat version where you could do, like, World War II through modern day, maybe even earlier. I think you can do gangsters with it, and I can't remember what it's called. And I own a copy, but I still can't remember what it's called. And as well as one of the Osprey games of Gods and Mortals is from the same designer, and it depicts sort of massive battles between gods and their human followers. So that's pretty cool. I also picked up, speaking of the Osprey games, I picked up Dragon Rampant and Black Ops, both from the Osprey game line. And Dragon Rampant fits an interesting niche that I really like, and it is sort of a halfway point between the small skirmish game of like a handful of minis and the large battle game like Warhammer or 40K. It's a small battle game that uses anywhere between 20 and 40 minis in total, and it looks like a nice game. I've watched some videos of it. I want to try it, but it's one of those games I don't really have any good minis for. But on the other hand, it is also one of those games that you can utilize any existing minis that you might have. It's really well set up if you want to have something else to do with your Warhammer minis, for example. They even have a number of sort of example forces that fit neatly into the Warhammer fantasy races. So if you have those minis sitting around, you want to try something new with them, this would be a good way to go. Black Ops, on the other hand, is another small-scale skirmish game, specifically kind of modern special forces fighting each other on small maps. It's not usually my thing, but at this point, I feel like I just want to buy all of the Osprey games and read them all, because they all sort of bring something interesting to the table, and I like the fact that they're doing them, and I kind of want to support them, even if they're even if it's just buying rule sets that I'm just going to read and not play, which is most of my games anyway. I just I buy way more games than I ever play. So on the video gaming front, for those of you, and I know there's probably anywhere between 75 and 100 of you who were interested in the XCOM videos that I was doing. The reason those stopped was because I've been having no end of problems with my stupid computer. And I don't actually think that it was related to doing those videos, but I also don't know for sure that it wasn't related to those videos. So I kind of just stopped because I was just afraid if I kept doing it, the computer was just going to die. And you have to understand this computer is at least 5 years old. And it wasn't super high end to begin with, and now it struggles to keep up with kind of modern games, which is, and I haven't. It's been a long time since I've been enough of a PC gamer that mattered at all. But as of XCOM 2, it's really kind of become an issue. So I'm probably not going to do any more video game videos in the short term. The other problem with it was that I was really feeling weird about having those on my channel, and I was thinking that maybe I should just start a new channel. And so if I do go back to doing the video game videos, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a new channel for it, and that way, those of you who come here for the painting stuff and the gaming, tabletop gaming stuff, you don't have to be bothered with that. And, I'll let you know where it is when it happens, if it happens. But that's not going to happen quickly because I would need to find a new computer before I do that. But speaking of XCOM 2, that has ended up taking a lot of my evening time. And although originally I thought, when watching videos of it, I thought it looked fine, but there was something about it that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I think mostly had to do with its art style. I didn't think I was going to like it as much, and as it turns out, I like it more. It's a more compelling story because rather than just being this sort of global force of defense against the alien incursion, now you're a guerrilla force trying to tie together the elements of resistance across the globe, which I find a little bit more a compelling story. And they've done a really good job with both simplifying some things and then expanding on other things, providing more detail to your weapons, and like individual characters can upgrade their weapons in different ways that provide them different benefits, and those benefits stay with you with the units even as they change weapons. So if you get a better sniper rifle and it had a cool scope and a hair trigger, your new sniper rifle, well, apparently you snapped those things off of the old one and snapped them onto the new one. So it's really cool. And then the conversion, the character creator is pretty cool. A lot more options there, and you can make stuff even like Matt, the radar technician, which is something that I did last night because I could. And so it's been so good that I've been consciously avoiding it. Like I set aside specific time to play it, and it's usually in the evening, and then I don't play it outside of that because I feel like I'm addicted to it, and if I let myself, as I did last week, I will spend more time playing that than I really should, and it'll get in the way of my actually working. So that's a bad thing, and I don't want to encourage myself in this behavior. I think that's going to do it for today. I think this is probably a little bit longer than I normally go on these things. You can be looking for more videos from me coming up. I'll probably do several more videos, and certainly in the short term, maybe even right after I do this one, I am going to do the disassembly of the assault carrier video, because it's pretty straightforward. I mean, the thing is, it's already disassembled, so it's really just walking you through what I did. And I think that's going to be it for now. But the, sort of over the next couple of weeks, I'll be doing one on the 3D printing. I want to actually get that little tray that I made so that you can kind of see the quality level of where I'm starting from. Although they printed it at low quality, which I'm fine with. It's not like it needs to look good. And I may be talking a little bit more about my experiences with watercolors, because I'm realizing that paint is really affecting the quality level of my painting in a real positive way. And I'd like to go into more detail about that, but I don't necessarily want to do that right now. So I'll put some more thought into that, and we'll talk about it later. So that's going to be it for now. Thanks again for watching. And again, if you are liking these videos, definitely click the little like button on the video. If you are just dropping in and this is the first time you've been here, hey, how's it going? You might want to subscribe, because that way you can see more of these videos in the future. And that is going to do it for now. Thank you all for watching, and I will talk to you all later.